Hey, everybody, welcome to Mental Health Matters. It's Tom Duff, Executive Director, licensed clinical social worker, therapist to the stars of St. Louis Counseling. If you're interested in our services, check us out at stlouiscounseling.org. Remember to spell out Saint on your search. The podcast Mental Health Matters, we basically try to break down stigma, make mental health okay to talk about around the dinner table, help people remember we all have mental health just like we all have physical health. And more importantly, the bottom line is mental health touches every aspect of society, right? There's every component that we deal with, from our personal relationships to the society, the systems of society that mental health is a part of. And this month we have World Kindness Week. We have our World Kindness Day as well, too, coming up. And we thought, man, kindness, mental health touches so many components. So we went out and got kind of an expert in this, and that is Brooke Jones. Welcome, Brooke. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about kindness.
Excellent. And Brooke is Vice President of the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation. And, what better way to kind of talk about kindness than to bring you in, talk about what is kindness, where does it come from, what's the difference between kindness and being nice. So there's a lot to unpeel here a little bit, but my first question is this, right? How did you get into this work, this realm, right? Let's talk a little bit about that first.
It's a great question because I will tell you that I had no idea that something like this even existed. My background is all in the arts and project management, and I realized it was time to make a change and do something that really mattered to me and my values and the way I was trying to raise my daughter and all these things. And it was just by happenstance that I saw this position with the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation, and I thought, somebody's doing this and they're paying people to do that. What is
Uh-huh.
this?
Yeah.
Um, and it's just always been an important part of my life to try and randomly and intentionally do kindness whenever I have an opportunity to do it.
Was that instilled in you like growing up and part of your life, or is that like a conscious effort you decided at some point, like, no, this is who I want to be?
It was actually a conscious effort. I had a relatively troubling childhood with a lot of trauma, and as I grew up, I realized that the times that I felt good about myself and the world was when I was doing acts of kindness and or when I was receiving them. And I kind of tuned into that and realized when I started raising my own daughter that this is something I want to intentionally instill in her, how important kindness is, just in general, but to her own mental health, to the mental health of others. It's so important. Just these small little moments that seem insignificant that can really change somebody's life.
So, if you can put it into words, right? What's that do to your spirit, right? That your being, so to speak, when when you're being kind to somebody else, what is, and or when
Yeah.
someone's kind to you, like, how does that affect you? If you could try to put that into words.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think we think of kindness as a selfless act, right? That it's unselfish. But in fact, it's selfish. We do it because it does feel good. We get this rise of dopamine and serotonin and all those feel good chemicals in our body. And there's something to that. We want that. We want to repeat that feeling. So it's both. It's selfish. It's unselfish. It's something that I think we all tune into and realize, at least for me personally, that when somebody's kind to me or I'm able to be kind to somebody else, I feel like I'm doing something in some small way to make the world a better place in that moment, in that person's life. Um, and it may last, it may not. I've heard so many stories of people where, again, some insignificant moment or what seemed insignificant was a huge turning point for them when somebody was kind to them. So it's important to me and to my daughter that we look out for those moments and try and create those more significant moments out of what seem to be insignificant moments.
So with the foundation, right? In your involvement there, What, well, talk a little bit first, I guess, about, the mission of the foundation and what's the kind of some of the impact that you guys feel you're making.
Sure. The mission is simple, although it took us a long time to really nail down and articulate it, but it's making kindness the norm. And when we say that, it's everything from looking at our news feed on our social media channels that are filled with negativity and crisis and painful things, that we can choose to build a feed that is more kindness related, right? More positive, more upbeat. It's not to say that we're ignoring what's really happening in the world, but sometimes it's just too much, especially over the last couple years, right? We've
Mhm.
spent between politics and race relations and everything. It's been so difficult. Not to mention we throw COVID in the middle of that.
Mhm.
That we've got to look for ways to increase joy in our lives. And so for us, it's this idea of making kindness the norm. The way that we do that, we have three main areas of focus. One is schools. We offer a free evidence based social emotional learning curriculum to schools. We are now in almost 50,000 schools globally
Wow.
with that
Amazing.
curriculum. Yeah, we're really proud of that. I mean, it's a great curriculum, and it's all based on the lens of kindness and how we can help kids realize the importance of these concepts of respect and responsibility and integrity and compassion and caring and courage and all of these things. And then we also have a similar program that we do in the workplace where we can try and create kinder workplaces where people feel valued and feel a sense of purpose, and they feel connected to those that they're spending so many hours a day with away from their families. And then the last area of focus is homes and communities. How do we bring it all together when we get home? Kids are at school learning it, people are at work practicing kindness. How do we bring it back home and create a trifecta? So
Hmm.
that's kind of our nutshell version of what we do.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sure you could talk for a long time,
Yeah.
right? About a whole foundation and what you do. So, in your opinion, what kindness and being nice, is there a difference? Is there not? And what is that?
I think I think there is a difference. Nice is sort of a way of acting, right? It's you can walk into a room and put the face on and say, how are you? I'm great, having a good day. How are you? There's nice, which is not being an unpleasant person and being nice, right?
Hmm.
But kindness is really based on actions in my mind. It's not just based on the face that you put on in front of others. It's really based on what are you doing? There's kindness requires action, and I think that's the
Hmm.
difference.
Yeah, that makes total sense then. Because yeah, you look at very superficially, you look across, maybe your workplace. There are probably a lot of nice people, but how many people go out of their way, and I think it's really hard in the workplace because I know we all get so, so I'm in a counseling office, right? And then we're around a lot of people that know the impact, but then of being kind and engaging and going out of your way. But then, to take those steps, sometimes it feels like it's got to be this conscious effort. It's got to be
Hmm.
not a habit, so to speak, but develop, kind of healthy habits. I mean, what are some suggestions, like real basic, within the workplace? Is how do you begin to promote and implement a kindness strategy?
Hmm. Um, there are a few things, and they're relatively simple. It usually, if not always, starts with leadership, right? People they learn from what's being modeled. So leadership, simple things like acknowledging people when they walk in the door by their name, eye contact, hi Tom, good to see you today. I'm glad you're here. Um, really simple things like that, and then validating them in a way that uh, they don't feel they have had to have left everything at the door, right? Their personal life, you can't leave that at the door. So how do you create a safe space in a workplace where people can be vulnerable enough to say, my kid is sick, or, I'm worried about my dog. He was limping this morning, or whatever it is, where you feel like you're safe enough to share some personal things, and that you also would be acknowledged in a way to say, hey, does your dog need to go to the vet? It's okay if you need to go. Um, what a huge gift that is, right? If you feel seen at work. I think the other thing that I tell people when we talk about with a workplace is so many people have these gifts that they maybe aren't even aware of. And I have an example of it. My boss told me once, we were talking about kind of all of our strengths and what is
Mhm.
everybody's job? What are we actually doing in our jobs? And he said to me, I wish you would write more. You have such a way of writing that people love it. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't write. I'm not a good writer. And then I thought about it and I went, I love writing. And he said, I want you to do more. And it really stuck with me because I tell people everybody has these talents that maybe we're unaware of and maybe they are even unaware of. But when we see it in each other, say something like, you're so good at this. I love it when you do this. And allow them to bring that out somehow in their work and feel really connected to their work, feel a sense of purpose. It's it's really hard when you work in a place and you don't feel connected to the mission or the people. You don't feel your work is valued or that you have purpose there. So there are really simple ways to do that. A lot of that's on our website, but those are just some simple ways, right? Acknowledging and
Mhm.
validating the people that you work with.
Yeah, it goes a long ways. And, you mentioned the concept of, leaving your personal life at the door, and a lot of times over the years, I've interviewed a lot of people for positions and stuff, and they're all like, "Oh, I keep work separate and I keep home separate. Don't worry about that. I won't be bringing that in." And through the years, I realized, no, that's not the way it works. You can't
Yeah,
do that. And then, the way you put it too, it's like when people are able to do that, that's an act of kindness, right? From an employer, so to
absolutely.
speak. And I think that's probably something that, you know, employers and businesses, corporations, whoever it may be, overlooks that basic concept of like allowing someone that space to be able to say those things is kindness in that regard.
Absolutely. And I think, to me, it's the ultimate difference between a boss and a leader is somebody who can acknowledge in themselves, everybody has stuff going on at home. So why would we expect people to somehow shift into another person when they cross that threshold at work? That it doesn't work that way. It's not possible.
So to the naysayer, right? Because there's a lot of naysayers right now out in the world. You mentioned social media, see a lot of stuff there, but
Yeah.
people that might say like, we don't need that in the workplace, or kindness, whatever. Just go on about your business and try not to offend people. Like, why should I be intentional about this? I mean, what's your argument back, so to speak?
Well, I think ultimately, and we get that sometimes. Certainly, when we go out to schools, we'll see it. And there's always a teacher in the background with their arms crossed, kind of like,
Uh,
"This is not my job to teach this. This should be happening at home." Or, there's always a naysayer. And I think the way we usually would try and have a conversation with them about it is scientifically, right? It comes back to the well-being of your people matters, and it matters down to the bottom line, where if you're talking about profit, all of those things, if you don't have a workforce that feels safe and happy and purposeful and valued, it's going to reflect in your bottom line, period. I mean, they will work less, they will be more distracted, they'll be less communicative and connected to the work and the people around them. There's many, many reasons economically to say, and fiscally to say it's important, but I think it ultimately comes down to um, us as a human race. Who are we if we're not taking care of each other? And it's funny, I just read an article a couple days ago about Darwin's theory of evolution, and this idea that the fittest survive, and how misinterpreted that has been over the years. That in fact, what he said was, we will only survive if we take care of each other. It is not the single fittest person out there that's going to survive. It's only if we cooperate and have compassion and communication with each other. It's the only way the species will survive. So I think he's right. And I think we're
Hmm.
seeing that when we look at divisiveness and all this really painful stuff that we're seeing. It's not helping us as humanity.
Hmm. Yeah, and the impact mental health wise, right? It has on individuals when you live in that toxic stress, right? That world of
Yeah.
ongoing, just kind of not acknowledging each other for your own strengths, your own individuality, and in that sense, yeah, definitely. I think that's, we can say COVID, like we've had an uptick, of course, in people seeking out counseling services, right? And you could say it's COVID because of grief and loss and stress and things like that. But at the same time, like you mentioned, some of those other stressors going on in the world, from politics to, um, just a lot more expression in social media of opinions. And so sometimes
Mhm.
I do wonder, like, how much of that is related to kind of the concept of kindness, concept of accepting each other, and is that taking its toll? And that's another reason why we're seeing this uptick in mental health services as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I also think a big part of it, and you could speak better to it than I could, but I think this idea of isolation, right, where we feel disconnected from people, that is not how our species is meant to be, right? We are meant to be connected, um, and it scares me. I think that we've seen more. Sort of aggressive behavior from people, whether it's just speaking out online or within their family and friend group to say, well, this is my opinion and my opinion is right and yours is wrong. Um, Less and less willingness to hear um, and really hear. I mean, actively listen to what others are saying about whether it's their political position or anything else. We're sort of pulling ourselves away from each other, and I think that's not a good path for us to be on in terms of society as a whole and our own personal mental health.
What I know I'm keep firing questions at you, but I'm kind of fascinated with it too. So what do you, from from your perspective, when it comes to the obstacles that get in the way? So kindness, hey, be kind, right? Go be kind. Simple to say. Sounds simple as well too,
Yeah.
because like, yeah, why wouldn't I want to be kind to people? But what gets in the way of that happening when we think that, like, yeah, I want to be kind, and maybe it's in the workplace, maybe it's at home, or in our relationships. What do you think are some of those major factors that just gets in the way
Hmm.
of those, uh, of being kind instead of just nice?
Yeah. I think it boils down to one thing, and that is fear. It's as simple as it sounds, as you say, to be kind. We've all been there where we're like, "Ooh, should I pay for the person behind me?" Or, something, uh, where you get this rush of like, I don't know if I should do this. I'm out of my comfort zone here." Because I think we're afraid of being rejected or made fun of or whatever. It's usually an irrational fear. I mean, that doesn't generally happen when you do something kind, but there's a kind of a lizard brain fear
Hmm.
happening of what if this is rejected? What if it doesn't go the way I hope? What if I say something stupid? Um, so we love the idea of it and we love the way it feels when it happens, but I think ultimately it's fear, and that we just stay in our comfort zone. And it's as simple as, when you're driving down the road and you decide, am I going to let that guy in front of me in traffic or not? And the safest thing, maybe not the safest in terms of driving, but the safest thing in your mind is, screw it, he'll get in behind me. I'll just go.
Hmm.
The nicer thing is to let the person in, but then there's this, well, he didn't wave, right? I didn't get the courtesy wave, or
Uh-huh.
um, so we start pulling it apart in our mind. What went well? What didn't? Would I do that again? Why wouldn't I? So I think we stay in that safe place,
Hmm.
and it takes courage to do an act of kindness, as simple as it seems. So
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It makes total like fear to leave your comfort zone, fear of what can happen. Maybe you're a shy person too, and then there's that fear there. Everything kind of does relate back to that, as you say, and courage is important. Because I'm just thinking about myself sometimes when I just walk past somebody, or you don't take the time. And we all have the excuses, right? I didn't have the time to do that. I didn't have the time to say hello. I'm in a hurry, so I didn't let that person in on the road, even though. What's that going to slow you down? Maybe 5 seconds to meet your full destination. So that
Right.
logic part as well, taking over too. But yeah, it's interesting, because it is like when we were looking at doing this podcast. I'm like, yeah, kindness. That's something I think everybody wants, and it's supposed to be simple. Like, you're supposed to be
Right.
kind to one another. And I mean, even from a spiritual side, a faith-filled side, it's like, I think you mentioned too about how we're who we are and how we're made, and like we're to keep the species alive, even, right, to rely on each other, and to do that you got to have some kindness.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it seems like this fluffy idea, and we often that's another thing that we often are sort of trying to re-educate people about. Kindness is not it's not a simple it's not a simple thing. It's pretty complicated if you think about it in the sense of the greater good of humanity, right? It's simple in the moment,
Hmm.
but I think I really do believe ultimately it's what is going to save us if we choose to take care of each other or not, and take care of ourselves. Big part of kindness is self-care, and I know that phrase is overused these days, but um, there's so much exhaustion out there right now, right? People are tired and they're scared, right? COVID scared us.
Hmm.
Like what was really going to happen in the beginning? It was, are we all going to die? What is going to
Hmm.
happen?
Hmm.
Um, and we're coming out of that still. And I think if we choose to go down the path of taking care of each other the way we did in the beginning of COVID, because man, always during a crisis, the most beautiful acts of kindness show up. And
Yeah.
I mean, every
Hmm.
time it's like, whether it's a fire or 9/11 or mean huge tragedies or small ones locally, everybody jumps in and wants to help each other. And I think that is who we are as human beings. I really believe at the core of everything, we want to help each other, we want to take care of each other, and we're letting other things get in the way.
Yeah, for years, I worked in environments where I was using de-escalation skills. I was trained in de-escalation skills, verbal de-escalation, and everything, of course. And always trained to know there's something you know going on the inside of somebody, and we hear that phrase a lot now too, like, hey, be nice, be kind to people, because you never know what's going on the inside. And
Mhm.
I think about that a lot. We know when with you see customers inside of retail shops going off on the clerk behind the desk, for something out of their control, and it's like you have no idea what that person's going through. Either side, right? The
That's
person why
right.
they're triggered to yell, and then the person that has to deal with it. We have no idea, and it's like diplomacy goes a long ways, and there's great connection points with kindness there as well too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you're totally right about that. That if we can take that couple of seconds to think, there's always a choice in those moments to act a certain way and behave a certain way. And I think if we just take that extra second to say, I don't know, I don't know what triggered that person, or I don't know what's happening here, but there's clearly something deeper than just this moment. And what do I choose in this moment? Is it kindness or is it not?
Yeah, sometimes it's that conscious choice. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. Now, I know a few years back I saw in your bio, you did a TED Talk, right? What was
I
that
did.
like? Yeah, what was that like?
It was, I did it for no other reason than to overcome my greatest fear, which was public speaking at the time. And I felt I had a message to deliver, which was my own story of why kindness was important in my own life, and why, again, as I mentioned earlier, that these moments that in my life to the other people would have seemed insignificant were life changing for me when somebody was kind. Um, and I think, you know, I go back to why would I do the TED Talk? It was
Hmm.
really just a selfish, like, I've got to get over this horrible fear, and what better way than get up on stage and do a TED Talk?
Yeah, what a way to break that cycle, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. And now I'm fine. If I could do that, I can do anything.
Nice, nice. I bet that was probably a little stressful time for you.
Very much.
Yeah, you probably needed some kindness going back and forth.
Yes. Yes.
So if I mean, we kind of talked about some basic examples of being kindness across, your day, like from letting someone in traffic. But I mean, when it comes to just random acts, or maybe they're not even random, maybe they're intentional in certain ways. What are some like basic things that somebody could do?
So there's so many, and I think it depends on kind of who you are, as you said earlier. If you're an introvert, or maybe you're an extrovert, or whatever. Um, I tell people to tune in to those moments where there's an opportunity for kindness. And it can be as simple as opening the door for somebody who's struggling with packages, or who is in a wheelchair or something. Like, just take that extra minute and hold the door open. But you could do something greater. We have a neighbor who is elderly and very much um, in their house, 24/7. So we take couple times a week, go over, take some cookies, just check in. Are you okay? What do you need? And sometimes it's just that they want to talk. That's okay.
Hmm.
Take that moment out of your day, check in on somebody. Maybe it's a friend who's going through a tough time. Reach out, check in. And I know, in mental health, they would say the same thing.
Hmm.
There's so much to that, to know that you are connected to somebody else, especially when you're in a dark place, that somebody cares. Um, I think, there's always the classics, right? Pay for the person behind you in line, buy a cup of coffee for somebody. But I think that I always try and tune into who needs what in my world, and
Hmm.
is there something I can do? I don't want to be a fly buzzing around the room, um, but there's always somebody that needs something, and it may just be a kind word to say, "Hey, I know you had an interview today. I hope it went well, and have a great weekend."
Hmm.
That's great. So I think things like that. Those are what I tell people, and I think it's, again, that tuning in. There are opportunities around us if we really look for them. There are opportunities for kindness.
So, so I'm just thinking about, some plan of action stuff. So I'm hearing one, kind of taking time to see what's around us, what connects to you in regards to, are you an introverted, extroverted, what would make sense, and then recognizing that fear. So you might have some fear to come out of the comfort zone to say those words like, "Hey, how was your follow up on that?" So kind of prepping yourself to have a little bit of courage, so to speak, and then from there initiate, right? And
Yeah,
then see how it feels.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then do it
yeah,
again.
yeah, and do it again and do it again. Let me ask you this:
And
is being kind tiring? Is it emotionally exhausting? Is it like something that maybe when you're coming into that, let's say you're building this program for yourself, it might be tiring at first and then it gets better over time because it becomes easier?
yeah, I think it is that, it can be tiring depending on how far outside your comfort zone you go. There's a real mental exhaustion in some ways when you really go out. The TED Talk, that was way exhausting for me. So we like to talk about random acts of kindness as actually the ultimate destination, that the more you practice small intentional acts of kindness, ultimately you get to the point where you're truly doing random acts of kindness because you're not even thinking about it anymore. So I would say to stay away from, being exhausted by it. Just pick up on these small intentional acts that you can do. It's okay if you want to think about it, plan it out. Even if it's just texting a friend, think about, who do you want to text? What do you want to say? Right? And then do it. And I promise you won't be exhausted by that. But
Hmm.
start with the small ones and then
Hmm.
move up from there. And maybe you do a canned food drive at work by this time next year.
Hmm. Awesome. Awesome. Wow, this is great because I think as much as we think it's simple, be kind, we were able to really kind of dive into the how tos and some of the obstacles that are in the way. So I think this has been great. If people want to find out more about the foundation, how should they do that?
They can check out randomactsofkindness.org. Everything is on there completely free of charge. And the other thing, if they're interested, they can text me directly. I actually have about 3,500 people on a text group that I
Wow.
text some little bit of inspiration every day. And that text group, you can text me at 303-529-2494.
Awesome, awesome. It's two great resources right there, right? In texting, we all do it, right? So,
That's right.
yeah,
Yep.
definitely love it. So, Brooke Jones, thank you so much for coming on board with us today, and excited to. I'm kind of jazzed right now to kind of put some of this into play for myself, and then at our agency as well too. So, thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Tom.
All right. This has been Mental Health Matters. Take advantage of Kindness Day coming up, right? But at the same time, do it every day, right? Start out small and then move into the bigger items. So if you're curious about our services at St. Louis Counseling, check us out at stlouiscounseling.org. And until next time, remember, mental health matters.